Hello everyone, I'm back with another video after a long time. In this video to just watch some video about the true state of Russian army. This video is from Not What You Think channel, and this video is telling about that Russian army is in very bad state in Russia. So let's see how bad state they are in. So let's go to the video and just see what is happening in Russia really.
Russian bulletproof vest is a lie. Everything else about the Russian military should be taken with a large grain of salt.
Okay.
While the vest looks solid, it certainly doesn't hold up when it's put to the real test. But why believe what a YouTube channel is telling you when you can hear about systematic lies and corruption within the Russian military straight from primetime Russian national TV? In a rare outburst on November 11th, Vladimir Solovyov, a prominent anchor on the state-owned Russian 1 TV channel, did not hold back, talking about the lies that the Russian military has been hiding behind from the bottom to the very top. This included deceptions about what actually is in Russian inventories, the true state of the military equipment, and the number of troops they actually have on the front lines. Now let me say that without a doubt, the Russian army still got a serious punch, but at the same time, it's not the army that we are led to believe, especially when you see the many examples that point to their lack of might. Some may call what we're about to present anecdotal evidence, but we'll let you be the judge of the true state of the second best military in the world. But how the Russo-Ukrainian war itself may have possibly been a direct result of systematic lying that is entrenched within the Russian government is not what you think.
Okay, let's see what's the truth.
The Russians are liberating historical Russian lands from Ukraine's Nazi regime, the so-called denazification and demilitarization. The city of Kherson was the only administrative center that Russia managed to capture during their 2022 invasion, which they later annexed and declared it Russian forever. They even put posters all over the city proclaiming that Russia is here forever. Ironically, that didn't last long, because on November 11th, the Russian army was forced by Ukrainians to retreat to the east bank of the Dnipro River. As the Ukrainian forces entered Kherson, they were welcomed by the cheering Ukrainian population. Scenes like this quickly turned the Russian referendum narrative upside down, as it was claimed that 87% of the Kherson population voted in favor of joining Russia. Clearly not. Not only Kherson was taken back by Ukraine, but also many Russian telegram channels became disillusioned. Even back in March of 2022, when Russia invaded Kherson, the local population greeted the aggressors not with flowers and Russian flags, but with Ukrainian colors as they yelled at the Russians to go home. The Russian Ministry of Defense proclaimed that 100% of its troops and equipment were successfully relocated to the other side of the river without leaving anything behind. I must admit, this does look quite organized, the way Russians stripped off their gear and swam naked across the river. As one might expect, Russian TV portrays everything about the Russian military in the best possible way, so why don't we balance it out? Where and what the Russian soldiers ate was great. In reality though, many were given food rations with expiry dates in 2015. This is how Russian soldiers do their laundry, although in reality, they were using washing machines that were stolen from Ukrainian homes. When Russia declared a partial mobilization back in September, it became evident that the 1.5 million uniforms Russia had bought and ordered years ago existed only on paper. That's why Russia advised their mobilized men to buy their own clothes and gear, as otherwise they would risk receiving shoes of different sizes, or some that date back to the 1940s, or possibly nothing at all. The Russian military can't even supply soldiers with enough socks, never mind helmets or bulletproof vests. Even the infamous Russian terrorist Igor Strelkov frequently runs crowdfunding campaigns on his Telegram channel for basic equipment like shoes. Speaking of helmets, there are multiple examples of what looks like a helmet, but in reality, it's not. I don't even know what to call this, but this is definitely not a combat helmet. In some instances, Russians have been caught wearing 1950s helmets which were repackaged with modern covers. In other instances, the helmets appear to be made out of plastic. Going back to the bulletproof vests, you'll be lucky to have got one which has some kind of metal plate instead of cardboard or foam. When it comes to the sizes of the vests, yet again, you get what you get. There is other evidence that points to the lack of basic equipment for the Russian troops, like the fact that they have ordered uniforms from Belarus and Iran, as well as numerous crowdfunding campaigns which supply Russian soldiers with uniforms, helmets, vests, and so on. When it comes to weapons, the situation isn't much better. The harsh reality is that Russia cannot provide its troops with enough quality weapons outside of the TV shoots. While Russians have a lot of Soviet Kalashnikov automatic rifles, their condition is poor, as you can see. But it gets worse. During training, mobilized men have to use mock weapons because simply they don't have enough real ones. Jumping to the battlefield, Ukrainians have found Russian troops using rusty and antiquated weapons. For example, this Mosin Nagant rifle, which dates back to 1891. Yes, it is still used in Russia, but only as a ceremonial weapon. The shortage of guns on the battlefield meant that the century-old rifle made it to the Ukrainian battlefield. This is actually supposed to be a decoy, and why pick on a decoy when the drones are not much more impressive? Russian TV often shows videos of Okhotnik stealth drones, but they're not even in production yet. What is in production is Orlan 10, arguably the most effective Russian reconnaissance drone with a price tag of about $100,000. But what's interesting is what's inside these drones. The drones that were shot down surprised Ukrainians because they're equipped with consumer-grade point-and-shoot cameras like Canon and Sony. Additionally, the funnel for the fuel was made from a plastic soda bottle. And of course, the electronics inside were all Western-made. That is some Russian manufacturing. On paper, Russia has over 10,000 tanks, but most of them are in reserve, and the chances are most will not even start. It was estimated that at the beginning of the war, Russia had just over 3,300 operational tanks. Fast forward to today, and Russia has lost nearly 1,500 tanks based on visual confirmation. So Russians had no other choice but to pull the T-62 out of storage, the ones that actually could be started. Since T-62s were produced in the 1960s, it makes you wonder what kind of condition these 60-year-old tanks were kept in. But wait, how about Russia's newest main battle tank, the infamous T-14 Armata? And that's a fair question. Let's just say that in 2015, during the parade preparations in Red Square, one Armata stalled. The commentator on the live broadcast said that it was a planned demonstration of towing military equipment. That's a first. In the end, Russia decided not to mass-produce T-14s, citing that the tank was too costly. Instead, they produced a limited number of T-14s and modernized older Soviet tanks. When it comes to the Russian Air Force, just like with the tanks, it looks great on paper. They have just over 1,100 fixed-wing fighter and attack jets. But here's the thing, most of the aircraft are under-maintained, so some of them fall down to earth even without Ukrainian help. In the recent months, multiple aircraft have been lost due to equipment malfunction even before they made it to Ukrainian battlefields. But worse, according to Western intelligence, it is very likely that Russia has more aircraft than they have pilots, because training pilots is quite expensive. Russian pilots receive a fraction of flight time every year compared to their NATO counterparts. According to British intelligence, Russian air combat training was heavily scripted and designed to impress senior officials. The budget that was supposed to go toward proper training and development of Russia's own navigation systems, such as GLONASS, which is basically a Russian GPS, must have ended up somewhere else. Because among the wreckage of Russian airplanes, Ukrainians frequently found consumer-grade GPS receivers such as Garmin, or even smartphones, which Russian pilots would have had to use due to the poor quality of Russia's own navigation systems. Yes, Russian pilots would tape commercial GPS receivers to their dashboard. Of course, when this embarrassment became evident, the Russian Ministry of Defense started blurring the cockpit dashboard to avoid further criticism. Then there is the Russian aircraft carrier, Admiral Kuznetsov, which is not an aircraft carrier. It is classified as a heavy aircraft cruiser, otherwise she wouldn't be able to pass through the Turkish Straits due to the Montreux Convention. Nevertheless, this carrier scares everybody, not only environmentalists, for obvious reasons, but also the pilots and crew on board the ship. Admiral Kuznetsov is so reliable that it has to be accompanied by a tugboat. More often than not, the carrier's propulsion systems break down in the middle of the sea, forcing it to be towed to the nearest port. Admiral Kuznetsov is currently in the dry dock, where among other things, its propulsion systems are being replaced. When it comes to Russian missiles, not only do they rely on Western electronics, they are also far less accurate than we are led to believe. In a recent review, the US Naval Institute concluded that Russia's claims regarding their missile accuracy were exaggerated. Russians advertised an accuracy of a few meters, but the reality was more like 30 to 50 meters. In addition, Western intelligence suggests that Russian missiles suffered up to 60% failure rate during the early days of the Ukraine war, which makes Russian missiles sound like Russian roulette. Seriously, numerous Russian missiles have refused to fly to foreign territories and just wanted to come back home. To be fair, Ukrainian missiles sometimes also appear to go off course, as happened on November 15th when they ended up in Poland, killing 2 civilians. Another Russian tech with exaggerated performance is the S-400 air defense system, which was proclaimed by the manufacturer to be capable of intercepting HIMARS artillery rockets. But as you can see, that is clearly not the case. To be fair, the S-400 is still among the most capable air defense systems in the world today, but is clearly not as capable as it's often perceived to be. Even according to Igor Strelkov, the S-400 is not effective against large HIMARS attacks.
It's bad, man.
Let's
It's
switch gears to
bad.
Ukrainian forces for a minute. No one imagined that Ukrainian forces could stand against an invasion from Russia, similar to what happened with Crimea in 2014. Obviously, the Western help made all the difference in 2022. It's hard to imagine Ukrainian forces having the level of success that they've had without the US and NATO. But even without all the external help, there is a key difference between Ukrainian soldiers and Russian troops. Ukrainians know what they are fighting for, and the same cannot be said for Russians. The Russian military is currently in the same state as the Ukrainian forces were back in 2014. Let me explain. Even though the Russian annual military budget is about 1/10 that of the US military, Russia still spent over $1 trillion over the past 15 years. $1 trillion is a lot of money, but where did that money go? A big chunk of the money went to the Russian Navy. Russia built 2 Admiral Gorchkov-class frigates, each costing $450 million. They also built 3 Admiral Grigorovich-class frigates with a unit cost of $430 million. Russia additionally paid $250 million for each of its 7 brand new corvettes, plus another $160 million for each of its 2 brand new landing ships. But at the same time, Russian oligarchs with close ties to President Putin began building their own fleet, the fleet of mega yachts. Let me just mention a few. Here is businessman Alisher Usmanov's Dilbar mega yacht. This is the former Russian governor Roman Abramovich's Eclipse. And this one is former deputy chairman Igor Sechin's Amore Viero. While over the past 15 years, Russia spent $3.2 billion building new warships, President Putin's oligarchs spent just over $4.1 billion building their own mega yachts. But these mega yachts are just the tip of the iceberg. Yachts are just large enough for everyone to notice, but the amount of money that has been stolen from Russia's military and non-military budgets is enormous. The systematic corruption is the reason why Russian troops were receiving explosive charges that had wood in them instead of TNT. This corruption is why the reactive armor on Russian tanks was filled with rubber instead of explosive charges. This is why Russians never properly invested into the communication equipment and got stuck using old Soviet radios and even Chinese walkie-talkies. This is Sergei Pugachev, a former close friend of Vladimir Putin, hearing countless lives.
So in this video we can see some lackings of Russian army, and they're failing videos of Ukraine. So that's something new information we can get from this video. So what is your opinion in this part? Please let me know what you guys think about this Russian army, and if you are from Russia, please let me know your thought about this Ukraine-Russia war, and if you're from Ukraine, please let me know the situation there in the description comment box. So that's it for today. Subscribe to our channel Shutterstock Renovations. Sorry, this is Ash Renovations now. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe now. Thank you for watching. Peace. A peace. You know? A peace.